You remember the sound of a basement door closing? It was 1970, and the radio was playing nothing but defeat. A 50-year-old man in Memphis was still living out of a suitcase. A woman in Detroit had just walked away from a steady check because she was tired of singing other people's songs. A kid in Gary, Indiana, was losing his voice in a studio 3,000 miles from home, and his father was watching the clock to make sure he didn't stop. These were the people the industry had already buried. But something happened that year. 13 artists refused to stay dead. This is the story of what happens when you stop asking permission and start taking what was always yours. Number 13 is 1970, and the Jackson 5 own I Want You Back. The story starts in Gary, where 5 brothers lived in a 2-bedroom shack, and their father made them rehearse 5 hours every day in a basement after school. Their friends were playing outside. They were singing in the dark. By 1968, they had cut tracks for Steeltown Records that went nowhere. The basement kept getting colder. Then Berry Gordy moved the family to California and threw them into Sound City Studios with the best session musicians money could buy. Michael Jackson was 9 years old. His throat was raw from singing the same lines over and over because the label needed a hit to justify the move. On October 7, 1969, the record hit the shelves. 2 million copies sold in weeks. The family left the motels and moved into a Hollywood estate with a swimming pool. By January 1970, they knocked the Beatles off the #1 spot. 4 singles in a row went straight to the top. What started in a freezing basement ended with the first group in history to own the charts before they were old enough to drive. At position 12, 1970 belongs to B.B. King and The Thrill Is Gone. For 20 years, King played 300 nights a year in the Chitlin circuit. The clubs were cramped. The pay was nothing. The white radio stations locked him out and called his sound old-fashioned. He owed the IRS $100,000. He kept his Gibson ES 345 plugged in anyway because losing that guitar meant losing everything. In June 1969, a producer named Bill Shimchick booked Hit Factory Studio and added strings to the track. King almost walked out when he heard the violins. He thought they would ruin him. He thought the blues didn't need that kind of sound. He was wrong. The song hit number 15 on the Hot 100 in early 1970. A middle-aged bluesman finally got enough money to stop living out of a suitcase. By 1971, he had a Grammy. Today, younger players like Gary Clark Jr. still chase that stinging reverb, that crying tone that saved a man's career in the last moment before he ran out of time. Aretha Franklin stood at number 11 in 1970 with Call Me. 6 years at Columbia Records had cost her $500,000 and 0 hits. They wanted her to be a polite jazz singer. She sat at the bottom of the charts with a reputation for being difficult. She was called a has-been before she turned 25. In 1967, she walked away from the big money and signed with Atlantic. She flew to a small studio in Alabama where the session players couldn't find her groove. She had to play her own piano. In 1970, she took over the producer's chair herself. She ditched the handlers. She wrote her own lyrics and arranged the horns until she landed a number 1 R&B hit that proved she didn't need anyone to tell her how to sing. She logged 18-hour days in the booth. Her voice rasped. She refused to leave until the Grammy for Best Female R&B Vocal Performance was locked in. It was her 3rd straight win. The throne was hers. Every modern singer who pushes their lungs to the breaking point on a soul track is chasing the gold standard she set when she stopped taking orders and started leading the band. Number 10 in 1970 is James Brown with Santa Claus is Definitely Here to Stay. King Records tried to freeze him out after he demanded his own label. His bank account drained while the suits bet he would crawl back for a paycheck. He didn't crawl back. He gambled his last dime on a private jet to Nashville for an emergency session. He worked the band until their fingers bled. He had to prove he didn't need the old guard to make a hit. In 1970, the track hit the streets under his own brand new label. He snatched back the keys to his career. He forced the industry to pay him on his own terms. Bootsy Collins and the New Kids played through 110 degrees of heat in rooms with no ventilation. They stayed upright on coffee and nerves until the groove was deep enough to shake the walls. Every funk drummer today still mimics the snap of J-Bo Stark's snare. That whip crack timing lives in every hip-hop loop that moves a crowd in a modern club, a sound born from a man's refusal to ask for permission. It breaks my heart a little. Only 1% of people tuning into Retro Waves FM are subscribed. The rest of you return for the nostalgia, drifting in the memories of a better time, but you still won't commit. Think about it. You spent time here feeling young again, yet you leave before the magic settles. Subscribing is free, 0 cost, but it means you'll never lose the signal to your past. This channel is your time machine. Keep it running. Be the 1% who honors the memory. Wilson Pickett sat at position 9 in 1970 with Engine Number 9. For 2 straight years, he had 0 top 10 hits. The Atlantic Records brass was cooling on his sweat-soaked style. The Detroit sound was stealing his lunch money. He ditched the comfort of Memphis and Muscle Shoals and gambled his reputation on a trip to Philadelphia. He bet his last scrap of relevance on two guys named Gamble and Huff.
Been so long since I held up.
The old guard didn't trust them yet. Sigma Sound Studios became a pressure cooker. Pickett screamed over a locomotive rhythm until the track climbed to number 14 on the Hot 100. The old dog still had teeth. The session cats laid down a beat so filthy and hard that it became the foundation for the next 20 years of street music. Every hip-hop crew from the Bronx to Compton would chop it up and sample it. This 3-minute blast of heat hauled Pickett out of the bargain bin and back into the spotlight. It dragged his career out of the dirt and forced the industry to pay him his respect and his royalties. A man who refused to fade when the radio said it was time. The Four Tops owned position 8 in 1970 with It's All in the Game. Between 1954 and 1963, the group bounced through 5 different labels with 0 hits. Levi Stubbs rejected a solo contract to keep his friends from starving on the street. Berry Gordy signed them to Motown in 1963, but buried them on the Workshop Jazz subsidiary. Like a bird on the wing, it's gonna fly away. They sang standards for no money, while younger acts like the Supremes took all the radio spots. Fly away, like a bird on the wing. By 1970, the Holland Dozier Holland hit machine had quit and left them for dead. The group teamed with producer Tony Visconti to cut a cover of a 1911 melody. It clawed up to number 24 on the charts. Levi Stubbs stood at the microphone at Abbey Road Studios and shredded his vocal cords. He turned a softball room tune into a rough soul shout because he was tired of being treated like a lounge act. The track hit the top 5 in the UK. The group could survive without their old songwriters. They kept their headliner slots for another 30 years instead of playing oldie circuits for scraps. A man's voice refusing to be silenced by time or by the suits who had already written them off. Number 7 is 1970, and the Delfonics own Didn't I Blow Your Mind This Time. The trio spent 1967 in a basement on Ridge Avenue, earning $15 a week. They were told their high-pitched harmonies were too soft for the rough Philly streets. Tom Bell blew his last $400 on a glockenspiel and a sitar for the 1968 sessions. The label bosses refused to pay for anything but a standard drum kit and a piano. In early 1970, the group spent 12 hours straight in Sigma Sound Studios. They cut 15 vocal takes. William Hart's throat bled to get the falsetto right for the big payoff. The record moved over 1 million units by March 1970. The band was dragged out of the $50 a night club circuit and put on a private jet to the Grammy stage. Today, the track's heavy French horn hook is the backbone of George Michael's Waiting for That Day. The sound still hits hard 50 years after the checks cleared. A falsetto that cost blood in a basement dream that finally got its moment in the light. The Dells stood at position 6 in 1970 with Oh What a Day. The group spent 1955 to 1965 getting kicked around the bargain bins. The VJ label went belly up. They were left with empty pockets and no hits for an entire decade. In 1958, a station wagon crash nearly killed rhythm singer Mickey McGill. They were jobless. They spent years playing dive bars for gas money. They refused to split up. They refused to get day jobs. In 1968, they marched back into Termar Studios and bet everything on a 7-minute remake of Oh What a Night. A dusty 1956 flop became a million-selling monster that saved their skins. By 1970, the group was hauling in $5,000 a night for gigs. They traded in their dented vans for first-class tickets and silk suits. 15 years of being called washed-up losers ended when 5 guys in their 30s proved they were the kings of the street. They hit number 1 on the R&B charts and stayed there for weeks while the young acts vanished. A resurrection that proved the street belonged to those who refused to die. Freda Payne owned position 5 in 1970 with Band of Gold. She spent 7 years at labels like ABC, Paramount, and MGM, singing jazz standards that nobody bought. Don't you know that I'm way in the darkness? Oh. She watched her sister Sherry get all the attention. In 1969, she walked away from a steady paycheck to sign with Invictus Records. She was tired of being treated like a lounge act. She wanted a real shot at the charts. In early 1970, she stepped into a Detroit studio to cut a song about a cold bed and a wedding ring. Over 1 million copies sold. It hit number 1 in the UK. Holland Dozier Holland wrote the track under the fake name Edith Wayne to hide from a massive lawsuit with Motown. Payne sweated over the lyrics. She thought they were too young for her. The gold record finally landed on her wall after a decade of failure. She wasn't just another pretty face who couldn't sell a plastic disc. She was a woman who bet her last check on a song about loneliness and won. Her name finally on the marquee instead of buried in someone else's shadow. Jackie Wilson sat at position 4 in 1970 with I Can Feel Those Vibrations. This Love is Real. Between 1964 and 1966, his name slid off the charts. The IRS chased him for $180,000 in unpaid taxes. He played 3 shows a night in smoke-filled dives just to keep the lights on. What our friends say about the New York Suits labeled him a washed-up relic. He ignored the oldies circuit retirement trap and signed with Brunswick's Carl Davis. The move pulled him out of a 3-year sales slump. In 1970, the recording session hit the tape. The track clawed its way to number 9 on the R&B charts. It proved the man still had the pipes to pay the rent after a decade of industry doubt.
When things go wrong,
Wilson kept his shoes polished and his voice sharp through years of grueling road tours.
when things go wrong,
He collapsed on stage multiple times. He refused to stop performing even when his body screamed for a break.
listen, and ooh, what you're feeling.
In 1975, he suffered a massive heart attack on stage. He died a legend with a current hit, not a forgotten ghost from the 50s, a man who chose to burn out rather than fade away. Number 3 is 1970, and Smokey Robinson and the Miracles own The Tears of a Clown.
Oh yeah, baby. Now if I
By 1969, Robinson was finished with the road. He was ready to quit the group.
the tears of a clown, when there's no
The Miracles hadn't cracked the top 20 in 2 years. The crowds were thinning out.
just like Pagliacci did, I try to keep my
In 1967, Stevie Wonder handed over a jagged circus-style demo tape. It sat in a drawer for 3 years while the group struggled to find a hit that didn't sound like a tired rerun.
It's only to camouflage my sadness.
Producer Hank Cosby used two bassoons and a piccolo in the 1967 session to mimic a calliope.
But ain't too much sadness. The tears
A weird move. The label thought it sounded like a kid's carnival. They almost buried the song.
if I appear to be carefree, it's only to
In 1970, the UK division of Motown ignored the American office and pulled the track off an old 1967 LP. It forced a worldwide smash. Smokey didn't walk away. The track hit number 1 on the Billboard Hot 100 in December the 1970. A 3-year-old filler song became the group's biggest payday. Robinson became a star all over again, just as he was packing his bags. A man saved by a song he almost never recorded. Dee Dee Warwick stood at position 2 in 1970 with She Didn't Know. She kept on talking. Mercury Records dumped her in 1969 after years of her sister, Diane, getting the glory.
Exactly who I was.
Dee Dee's solo checks barely covered the rent. She spent months chasing a paycheck at Atco Records.
They cried.
She fought the backup singer label while her voice was relegated to the shadows of other people's hits.
Kept on talking. Talk.
In early 1970, she walked into Criteria Studios in Miami and cut a track so raw it forced the Suits to stop ignoring her.
Memory of your face is gonna be hard to erase.
The song climbed to number 9 on the R&B charts. Her name finally went on a marquee instead of a liner note.
But she kept on talking.
A decade of being treated like a ghost ended. Even with a Grammy nomination in her pocket, she kept grinding on the road.
But I kept
She proved that the Warwick name wasn't just a one-woman show. She was a voice that refused to stay buried in the margins. A woman who stepped out of her sister's shadow and claimed the spotlight with a track that said her name was worth hearing. King Floyd owned position 1 in 1970 with Baby Let Me Kiss You. He spent the late 1960s drifting through the LA scene with 0 hits and a pocket full of rejection letters. The Pulsar label let his career rot in the bargain bin. Floyd crawled back to New Orleans and begged Wardell Kazurg for a session at Malaco Studios. A place so broke they had to record on a shoestring budget just to keep the lights from being cut off. On May 17, 1970, they cut the track in just one take. They couldn't afford more tape. A desperate gamble turned into a million-selling monster that hit number one on the R&B charts. Atlantic Records shelled out big cash to buy the master tapes from the tiny Jackson, Mississippi studio after the song exploded on the radio. The big shots only call when you've already won. The heavy, dragging bass line and Floyd's gritty shouts became the new law of the land. Every funk band in the 70s had to mimic that swampy groove or get left in the dust, a sound born from poverty and one man's refusal to disappear.